Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coaches Corner University podcast. I'm your host, Paul O'Neid, and as usual, we are brought to you by Coaches Corner University. Use code podcast300 for $300 off of our education collective with 150 hours of continuing education resources, as well as discounts on all of our courses. We're also sponsored by TC Nutrition, Barefoot Shoes, and Bacon and Barbells. You can find discount codes for those in the description below. Today, the podcast is a very special one for me. Our guest is someone who has been an idol of mine since starting in the college world. He's a legend, and I have here written down, if you don't know who he is, you've brought shame to your family. Coach House, Joe Kenn, welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate it, Paul. Thank you for having me.
It's, I've actually said this on a couple of other podcasts with folks who know you, and I have known of you. There have been mutual connections with, my first mentor, Frank, being someone who worked with you. But there was one year where you and I had spoken once or twice. You reached out personally and wished me a happy birthday. And I was like, man, this guy doesn't know who I am from Adam and wished me a happy birthday. And it just spoke to your character. And, it's something that I really appreciated as a young coach coming up. So thank you very much for that and for being who you are. And today, I really want to dive into your journey as a coach, because something that I try to do on the podcast is showcase the many different ways that strength and conditioning coaches can both build businesses, earn livings, and hopefully get to a point where we can retire. And you're someone who has done it at every level, from high school to private sector to the college world for so long, to the professional level at the highest level, and now back to the private sector. I'd like just dive in right from the beginning. Like, what was your first strength and conditioning job?
So really, I would say my first strength and conditioning job, actually, I was a pseudo assistant strength coach when I was in college. I got really fortunate that we had a very strong high school strength training program in the early 80s. Excuse me. I was at high school from 81 to 84, and my high school football coach actually played at the high school that I went to, played with my dad. They were on the same team. So the relationship was strong there. So I was introduced to organized strength training probably before a lot of kids in that era were, when it came to training with the football team. And my high school was at that time one of the dominant schools on Long Island. It's still, even though it's not up to par as it used to be, it still has the most wins of any football program in Long Island history. It'll get surpassed soon, but right now we can still hold on to that.
Mm-hmm.
And we so if you didn't lift weights, you didn't play at my high school.
That's a good rule.
And even the guys who didn't lift weights still had to show up and make like they were lifting. And it was such a very athletic and very big program that very few sophomores played on the varsity, let alone started. And in our area, ninth grade was at the junior high. So you didn't get exposed to high school as a freshman. You were actually the top dog at the junior high. So like a lot of schools, are 9th through 12th, your ninth graders get exposed to that first year of high school, where we're being introduced to high school as a 10th grader. And so a little different dynamic there when it came to the football sense of it. But long story short, my dad, one of his jobs was he was a sanitation man, an old traditional sanitation worker, the ones that actually picked up garbage, not with a claw, with their bare hands through a barrel on their shoulders, and walked 20 miles a day in the morning. So he was a garbage man in the morning, drove the afternoon school bus for the junior high and the high school in the afternoons, and then he was one of the top doorman bouncers on Long Island during that era of the disco 80s. So my dad was very well known in the town. Most of the teachers were the same teachers at the high school when he was there. So there was very little wiggle room for me to get in trouble. When your high school coach is one of your dad's best friends, and all these teachers, and he had all the ins, and again, always around in a good way. My dad never really was what people call helicopter parents now. He was always around, but it was the right way to do it. Like he understood, he wanted to be there for me. He never like it was just a really good father son relationship, and it
Yeah.
was till the day he passed. It was just very unique, and so for me, I got caught up in the weight game early, and it gravitated to me because I'm smart enough to realize from a talent standpoint and the high school I'm at, these dudes, there's some dudes like I tell people all the time, the best football team I ever played on high school was my junior year, and I might have been the 10th best player on that team.
Hmm.
And a year later, I'm the second best player on the team with 30 scholarship offers.
Holy shit.
So it was one of those types of deals, or 30 might be a little bit exaggerated, but definitely close to 20 for sure. And so I get into the weights. I wind up starting as a 10th grader on the offensive line. And then the next 2 years, I started both ways and was fortunate enough to, I always tell people, I was fortunate enough to choose where I went to college for free. A lot of times, all you need is one team to give you a scholarship. And I always said, if it's for free, it's for me. So whatever school, if it would have been one school and it was, I don't know where, and I never heard the name and they were going to give me a scholarship and that's all I got, that's where I was going because I told my parents that if I don't get a scholarship, I'll just go work on the sanitation with my dad. I'm not going to have you guys try to figure out a way for me to go to school if I'm not going to be playing ball or whatever. We all have aspirations to be
Hmm.
professional and things like that. And I had the right, Lyle Alzado went to my high school. I trained with Lyle when I was in high school. He was 2 years, 3 years younger than my dad, but he trained at my high school coach's dad's garage where everybody lifted back in the 60s. So I had a lot of people who understood the game so I was very, what's the right word? I was not, I don't want to say I was groomed, but I was well versed in what it
Hmm.
took to be in a league. Did I have the capability as a player? Did I have the work ethic? And would I be put in a position to do that? So uh, like I said, I got to choose where I went to school. I chose Wake Forest for a lot of reasons. Most people being where I was at, almost everybody thought I was going to go to Syracuse, but the truth was, I knew at Wake I could start 4 years. Like I knew as soon as
Hmm.
I went on campus, and they were going to. Everybody else was recruiting me as an offensive lineman, and like anything else, I knew I was a better offensive lineman. But everybody knows there ain't no stats on the
Yeah.
offensive line, and I want to play. I want to at least try defense because that was the one thing that the Wake Forest head coach at the time, Al Gross, said. He said out of every lineman he watched on tape, what stood out with me was I played hard both sides of the ball every snap. And he said,
Hmm.
out of all the linemen that he saw, no one did it like that.
Right.
So I was going to have an opportunity to choose which way. So I make a long story short, I wound up starting 2 years as an offensive guard because I blew my knee out my first spring, right
Mm.
when they told me I was going to be the starting nose tackle. That very practice, I blew my knee out, wind up missing another year. So my whole career, I always tell people when you sit back and you say shoulda, woulda, coulda, we all kind of do that. And I've really, with my I don't want to get too deep into because certain things is I don't say taboo, but my spirituality comes a lot through meditation and
Mhm.
some of the Buddhist principles. So I've kind of really learned to look at the positive aspect of the journey where I look at where some people could be, damn house, if you didn't get hurt, you might have made the league. And then I go, well, I started 24 games in Division One. There's a lot of people that wish they could have done that.
Yeah, you try to find the silver lining.
Yeah. So for me, it's like I turned nothing into something because I easily, I wound up having another surgery. My first 3 years of college, I only played in 5 games
Mm.
because of various knee surgeries. And then we had a coaching change, which really could have derailed me. And luckily, that the coaches saw something in me, and I wound up, like I said, I started 24 straight games as an offensive lineman. The first, let's see, 8 was at offensive tackle. Then I moved to guard, and then my senior year, I started at guard. And then I knew right away, right after the season, you're kind of thinking, what do you think you got a shot? And the trainers pulled me in and said, hey, I don't know what your thought process is going forward, but we just want to let you know the scouts have already labeled you a medical reject. You're probably not getting a shot in
Mm,
the NFL. And I said, good to know, man, because now I'm going into coaching. So
yeah.
I was getting married that June. I was a December grad, and it was fortunate that one of our previous GAs took a high school job at a prep school in Florida that he had played at and needed a dorm supervisor that was married and an O-line, D-line coach and a strength coach. And there you go. So I started my career down at Pinecrest Pep in Fort Lauderdale in 1989. And I just did a post on Instagram with my first picture of me out there the first day. And you walk out there, now you've invested all this time. Like, I'm going to be a strength coach. I'm going to be a coach. I'm going to do this. And you walk out there and you're like, man, I hope I can do this because I don't have nothing to fall back on. Like, and that's where, like I said, so it really resonated even before that. So I was such an infatuated with the weight room that when when Coach Dooley came in and they took over, that stood out right away. And I was tasked with getting other people to train
Hmm.
in the because back then, it was the summers weren't like they are now, and
Hmm.
so I was pretty much put under fire. Like, hey, you're responsible for all these guys to be in shape, and if it's not, it's on you. Like, so it was like if they ain't in shape, I'm in trouble. They're not in
Right.
trouble. I'm in trouble. So I organized the summer lifts. Like I knew, and again, we were going to have fun. Like it wasn't like we were smart. Like I knew, like, and we were going to be in shape. So it was like, look, man, we go to class in the morning. Soon we got out of class, we were lifting and then running at the heat of the day at noon. And back then, you were still doing track workouts. So you're running 400s,
Yep.
200s, and all that. And then I'll be honest with you, when we got done with that, we packed up the coolers, crashed a pool at one of the apartment buildings, and drank beer the rest of the day. And then, and then played cards all night in the dorm and started all over. So that was our summers. My last 2 years in college was, hey man, we're gonna get this done, and we wound up winning. We went back to back winning seasons at Wake, which was hard to do back then. And
Yep.
at the time that I left Wake, we were the winningest senior class. We were the first winning. We were the first class with a winning record since like 1950.
Well,
And
I mean, it paid off. All
yeah,
the training and drinking paid
yeah.
off.
Well, we had fun, and like I didn't go to Wake for the academics, although I got a good degree, and I'm glad that I went and got challenged in some ways. But like I tell people, back then, man, I didn't know I was going to really go to grad school or how I needed to pursue this strength and conditioning field, so to speak. It was still relatively brand new in the
Yeah.
early '80s, and so I did an intern. Like I said, I coached my strength coach and I until the day he died. We're super close. He just passed away last year, and so I worked for him, and I had a key to the weight room. I was always in there, and I worked, and that was my summer job. My last 2 summers was working in the weight room and coaching the guys up that in the afternoon. The other guys who didn't come in and train with us after we'd go drinking, I'd come back and work the night shift and train the other guys. And so it was cool. And like I said, it was I got a really good degree, health and sports science. At that time, it wasn't PE. It got me prepared as good as it was, but like I wasn't looking to be no academic genius. They told me 2.0 gets me out. Hey man, that's C's get degrees. Back in those days, it wasn't
Hmm.
like so. I tell people all the time, they go, well, what'd you graduate Wake with? I said a 2.45, 0.45 more than they told me. I overachieved. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of funny. I mean, could I have done better? Probably, but I wasn't willing to invest hours in a library when it was college is supposed to have fun. I'm playing football, I'm getting my ass whooped, coming back from 2 knee surgeries. You know, so I did that, and then I knew I was after Wake in the academics. I knew at this point I got to go to grad school.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the ticket because back then that was your way in as a strength coach because there were no full time. It was very few guys even had head strength coaches. So the GA route was you were a full time assistant on a GA salary and schooling.
That's what I did too.
Yeah.
Even like
So,
late 2000,
yeah.
I think 2010 was when I got my GA job. That's the easiest way to get in.
Yeah. So, but I knew, I mean, obviously I'm getting married. I have to get a job. And this is when this broke. It was an ideal situation to get my foot in the door as a coach and help build my resume coming right out of college to land a GA job.
Mhm.
So I go to Pinecrest, coach 2 years, come back the second semester, work at Wake as an assistant, and just start flooding the market. Now back then there was no internet, so literally I'm calling the NSCA job line every single day. Back then it was you dialed 719 or whatever it was, and then it would say jobs updated yesterday, and then or you'd hope that a new job would be updated and you'd have to, write down the information as fast as you could and fire out a resume and hopefully you got a call back. And that's how you did it. And uh, so I'm flooding the market, and then I get fortunate where I get a interview opportunity with Kevin Yoxall when he was the head strength coach at Texas Christian. And back then, they weren't flying you in for interviews. You want
No.
to go, you got to fly yourself. So
Yep.
here I am. I think I made $1,700 for the spring semester working at Wake as a strength coach. And I've got to fly to TCU to interview for a job in Fort Worth, Texas. Well, my wife's coming because she's not going anywhere sight unseen. So now
Right.
I've got to fly my wife with me and we interview for the job, kill the interview. Coach Yox offers me the job, so obviously we accept.
Hmm.
Then he goes, well, now I've got to see if I can get you into grad school. And I'm like, oh, here we go, right? And what happened was back then, they can get you in on like provisional status and this
Yeah.
and that. But what happened with Yox was the GA before I was there who came in as provisional, didn't take care of his business and flunked out.
Oh,
So they weren't going to they wound up not giving me provisional status. So now I don't have a job. So I don't have but Yox and now we actually work together at Dynamic. I said, hey, after 35
okay.
years, we finally work together. But he goes, I'll do whatever I can to help you. And sure enough, he knew Coach Thompson was looking for a graduate assistant at Boise State. I had a couple of other opportunities, but at that point in time, I wanted to be a strength coach, and I wanted to coach as many sports as I could get exposed to give me the best chances to be the best I could be. And the funny thing was the Boise State deal, and I had bigger schools that offered me GA positions, but the Boise State deal financially was the best stipend and the most sports.
Right. It's the
So
most opportunity.
yeah, so for me and like I told my wife, look, we're here 2 years. I get my master's. We're back on the East Coast. Like that was the plan.
Well, I mean,
Go
no
out
one
here
really
and
wants to
go.
stay in Idaho.
Well, and again, we really didn't realize how far it was till we pulled out what was it, the Randall McNally map, opened up and was like, and we were like, oh, damn, that's going to be a hike. And we were driving my 76 Monte Carlo, the 2-door with the big front end,
Oh, yeah.
packed to the brim, no AC, and drove that out from North Carolina to Boise, Idaho. And so we get out there, I knock out my 2 years, and now we've got a kid. So I have my
Mm.
first son my second year. I finished my master's that August, and we were searching for jobs. But it's just if you put your head down, you do the work, and you learn the game, you never know what types of relationships are built with coaches. And so I'm not. The jobs are tight, as you know. They're hard to find assistants
Yep.
in the 80s. early 90s. So at this point in time, I really had made inroads with the volleyball team, women's basketball, and now the gymnastics team. And
Okay.
the women's basketball coach at the time, June Doherty, who was my number one advocate and champion, went to the AD and said, I don't care what you got to do. You got to find a way for us to not lose Joe. If he's still looking for a job, figure out something that you can give him to keep him here at least another year.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in time, we also were going, this would have been, so they wound up bringing in a new football coach at this time too. And the head coach at the time, he pretty much did football, men's basketball, and I did all the other sports.
Right.
Like I worked 7 days a week, opened up track because our track coach was a high level track coach. So he wanted them guys lifting 3 days a week year round. So they
Mm-hmm.
lifted Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday all year. And then wrestling always lifted on Saturday. So I was there 7 days a week all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
long story, he could write a book on the travel. So they offered me a part-time strength coach position.
Mm-hmm.
It was 9 months, so it was going to go August through April. 13.5, no benefits was my first paying job
Fuck,
as a
man, you're
strength coach.
rolling. You're
Yes,
rolling.
1993 that was. So now we're here year 3. My wife, like I tell a lot of people, my wife carried the family my time at Boise. She wound up getting
Mm-hmm.
a really good job to a point where headhunters, she moved up in her field throughout Boise, and without her, who knows what would have happened. And
Well, that was
so
going to be
for
my question because
yeah,
I mean,
so
if
for
you're
me,
making 13.5 in 9 months, the money's got to come from somewhere.
yeah, so
So
she was the breadwinner for us that those 8 years that we were at Boise, and that's why, like when we took to Utah, I told her the next job we take, you'll never work unless you want to. You're never going to have to work ever again. And so a long story short, our 2 year journey to Boise wound up being 8. We were there 1991 to the spring of 1999, and that's when I landed the Utah job.
mm-hmm.
But now during this time at Boise, the good thing about making good runs is you find out a lot about what you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to really instill, the word culture. That's a word that I call it a coach speak term. It's more of what I call a summation of a lot of values and
Mm-hmm.
interpretations of things. I think if you ask 20 coaches to define culture, you get 20 different answers. And same thing with mental toughness, another of those summation words.
Yep.
Don't get me started on that stuff. But so the so we were able to create uh, a new program modality that 30 something years later is known across the world as the tier system.
Oh, so you did the tier system while you're at Boise?
Created it at Boise.
Okay.
So what happened was, and this is again, kudos to June Doherty, the women's basketball coach. And again, I was still learning what a strength coach was, and it's kind of funny how it all works out because I was looking for mentorship because my strength coach in college was great, but we were HIT, so that was a whole different modality than your traditional power building, strength training stuff that was happening at a lot of universities across the time. At that period of time, you were either HIT, all machines, or 4-day split doing some Olympic lifts. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went out there to learn that. And really, when I got to Boise, I pretty much got told, hey, man, it's on you. And I was like, okay, because I'm thinking I'm going to learn programming, whoop, whoop, whoop. So I pretty much was on my own, to self teach myself with some direction from coach. And I learned Olympic lifting through Mike Conroy at the time, who was a former Boise State athlete. He was a high school coach at Meridian, one of the best high school weightlifting coaches in United States weightlifting history. He taught me the Olympic lifts. I learned more programming through watching how Ron was writing the programs for the football team and then deciphering things on the way. And then and having lifted 3 days a week primarily as a HIT, coming from the HIT programming, and then with the 4-day splits as I started my powerlifting career, I'm sitting in one of the very first meetings we're with June, and she sees me walk in and she's thinking, here we go again, another football player just biding time with the women. And
Mm-hmm.
I took my job serious. I
Yep.
wanted to be a strength coach to athletes. I didn't care about back then. Hey man, a strength coach worked for the athletic department and did
Yes.
everything. Not like the a la carte sport specific strength coaching that's going on now, which is good and bad. There's a lot of positives and negatives to both of that.
Agreed.
So she just said, just not like yelling. It's like, I just wish I didn't get the old football programs all the time, just in
Mm.
passing. Because back then, that's what happened. All these sports were just getting the old football programs.
Well, yeah.
That's the way. So I was like, okay, good to know. So I started doodling stuff, and I'm like, okay, I really like the 3-day approach because I believe like whole body training is how athletics is played. It's
Right. You
not
gotta.
broken up into sections of the body, but I didn't necessarily agree with the body part stuff of the HIT.
Mm-hmm.
I like the compound movements. I wanted to do free weight versus machine, all that stuff
Yep.
in the late 80s and early, the HIT Jedis versus the Olympic weightlifters and all those NSCA beatdowns and round tables that guys want to fist fight each other. So I just started like looking at my powerlifting stuff and kind of trying to devise a way to create a system of utilizing the stuff from the strength sports, but make it more athletic related. And that's when we called, athletic based strength training is the tier system. And then again, manipulating how do you manipulate high volume, medium volume, low volume? So all this stuff starts to start doodling around. And, next thing you know, I have this back then template. And we were I was one of the first teams ever to use Excel. I had the old 4-inch screen Mac in my office in the 90s, and we were the first ones using Excel spreadsheets
That's
at
wild.
Boise. And so we start, like I said, we start creating this, and I'm just doodling. And back then it's just me, so I'm doodling and I'm looking at exercise selections and all the and back then I won't lie, we were still a lot of bilateral ground based stuff like just learning more about implementing single leg movements into athletic. But like, we were squatting 3 days a week, whether it's a pause squat, a front squat, or a back squat. And we were just, trying to figure out stuff as we evolve. But I had this plan in place, and regardless of the exercise in it, all they knew is it didn't look like the football program anymore.
Right.
So, okay, now you're winning. Now you're winning favor and you're earning the trust. And this at this point in time, I'm working with all the team, but the women's volleyball and women's basketball are my two big dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those were my two dogs. And because June didn't like certain lifts and the volleyball coach did, now they're seeing different exercises being in the same modality. So now the two sports are now, and June was always in the weight room. So she's starting to see how I'm operating.
Mm-hmm.
And she knew football. She was smart where she understood how to use Title IX to her advantage, but understood don't piss off the football too much. Because
Right.
back then, everybody shared a room. And I remember, I think when I really got her was, everybody had times. And one day she comes over early with the team and goes, hey, I know we're early and football's in here. And I'm like, oh, let's go. She goes, well, what about football? I go, you're my team. So they got Ron. I'm going, let's go, coach. Let's go to work. And I think then she knew, okay, I'm not a football guy. I'm a strength coach.
Right.
And at this point in time, the gymnastics program was writing their own programs because they didn't particularly like the way the other stuff was going. And June goes to the gymnastics coach. You need to let, like, my nickname was Big House at that time, but June called me Big Joe. She goes, you need to let Big Joe write your programs for you. So then I get gymnastics aboard. And then after my third year, going into my second semester of my third year, so my contract's going to run out in April. Uh, the new football coach and the head strength coach not seeing eye to eye. I don't want to get into the whole thing, but long
No,
story
no.
short, I'm going to do football in January, and
Okay.
they're going to move the head guy out. So now I bring the tier system football. So now they're used to a 4-day split, and now we're going to a 3-day with an auxiliary day because you still had to find a way with the football coaches to say you're training 4
Yeah,
because
you
it
got to
was
find
just
that happy
you had to.
medium.
So like the auxiliary day was all your accessory, like your back, your straps, and all that, and then the 3-day a week tier was based off of primary. It was really archaic the way we started, based off of what the NSCA was teaching me through the journals and what alleged experts were saying how you should train, and you're trying to put all this
Experts.
put all this together. So we trained the football team on a 3-day a week plus an auxiliary day, and we hit. So long story short, my contract's up in the end of April, and no one's told me if I even have the job or not. So I go into my supervisor and go, "Hey man, my last day's Friday. What's the deal?" They go,
Hmm.
"What do you mean your last day's Friday?" So my contract's up April 30th.
Hmm.
I said, and so long story short, I come in that Monday, sign a contract, and I'm the new head strength coach at Boise State. That was April of '94. First year as the head strength coach with the football program. We go 13-1. No, excuse me, 13-2. We lose to Youngstown State in the national championship game. I just got back last month, November, was the 30th reunion. I was up there, saw these guys for the first time in 30
Wow.
something years. It was sick. As much as I would have loved to have been coaching, still be on the grass coaching, I am so glad I wasn't to be there for that weekend, to be around those guys. Like, it was a hell of a turnout for 30 years. I would say almost the entire two deep was there and more.
Oh, wow.
And out of the full-time coaches, Coach Pokey passed, only 2 of the full-time coaches wasn't there. So it was you couldn't have asked for a better reunion for. And then this is when like you always ask, did you do right by people? Even though back then, strength coaching was crazy back then, man. It was a lot of negative reinforcement, break them down, build them up, calling everybody p word, and all this other stuff, and so the team voted for honorary captains, and they voted me and our All-American as the honorary captains to go out for the coin toss of the game, because they were like, "House, you were the one that kept it. You were the one who put it together for us, man." And from January through the season, so I thought, like, okay, everything you did, and you always like, hey, what would you have done different? But back then, I feel like I'm glad I didn't do everything different, because I felt like one of my strengths throughout my career was I evolved as the cultures and the environment and society changed, where you had to change what hard coaching meant. I don't think you should stop coaching hard, which a lot of coaches have. You
Yeah.
just got to change what hard means and how you interpret hard based off of what society has now exposed the athlete to. That's different than when I came up as an athlete versus what I saw in the 90s, what I saw in the 2000s, what I saw in the 2010s, and now what I see now as an observer in the 2020s. So I wind up staying for 5 years as the head. My road now is ending. Like, I've done
Hmm.
everything I can at Boise. We write the first article on the tier system. It becomes a hit in the strength and conditioning journal, and everybody's going crazy because I'm doing a 3-day a week free weight exercise program with Olympic lifts, but I'm not doing Olympic lifts first, like
Yeah.
everybody tells you to do. And because I didn't look at it like I told people, when I got, long story short, when I got reviewed by peers, which were no peer reviews, there's no such thing as peer reviewed for a strength coach.
No,
If you
we're
don't
not
have a
reading
P,
journals.
yeah, if you don't have a PhD or something like that, there's very few of my peers that are reviewing my stuff for those journals in the NSCA.
Yeah.
But all those people, they just think programming is based off Olympic weightlifting. So you train the Olympic lifts first for fast. But when you're training team sports, everybody's going to tell you we got to win the fourth quarter or we got to win the end of the game. We better be in shape at the end of the game. Well, how do I do that if the exercises that you're telling me are so important? I don't know if my guys are in good enough shape to maintain that level of high speed, whether it's in the weight room or in the field. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it wasn't about, and at this point in time, as we're evolving, I'm into powerlifting, so I'm subscribing to Powerlifting USA. I get exposed to Louis Simmons, and I'm learning about dynamic effort method and all this, and I'm like, oh, then you start now the big word's intent, but you
Mm-hmm.
can train anything fast or slow. It's just about adjusting loads
Yep.
and intensities. So long story short, I'm moving this stuff around, and everybody's like, well, you can't do a snatch after a squat and an incline. And I'm like, well, why not? Well, that's not how you write programs. I go, well, what protocols are you talking about? Well, weightlifting. I go, I don't train fucking weightlifters.
Yeah.
Train basketball players, football players, soccer players, and whatever. So, and again, we had different variations, like track and field's a little bit different. The energy systems demand. So, if I wanted to go through a cycle and I just wanted to have an extra explosive movement, I'd add a T1A and just put a light explosive movement first, and then run the tier system the same way for our throwers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would flip flop stuff. So, long story short, we put the package together. Uh, at this time, Rich Gray's my assistant. I wasn't gonna say. I wrote the article and they crushed it on the review, and I wasn't gonna send it back in. I was heated, like these, and
Yeah.
Rich was like, no, no. And at that point in time, Harvey Newton was leading the NSCA, and Harvey is one of the best weightlifting coaches we've had. And Rich called Harvey because he knew him from the Olympic Training Center and said, Harvey, man, and Harvey said, "You tell them I said just answer what they want you to answer because people need to see what this guy wrote."
Mm-hmm.
So Harvey Newton, here's an Olympic weightlifting coach telling me get it out there. So
Well,
I write it. It's published. It starts to pick up steam. Now I'm building my so-called who I am, and like anything else, business wise, financially, it hit the wall at a Boise. Opportunity at Utah opened up. Fortunate enough to interview twice, so I landed the Utah job, which back then was a big move for a guy like me. I'm going from a team that just started in 1AA,
mm-hmm.
and now I'm going to go to what's like a top 40 program, University of Utah, and be the director of strength and conditioning, and then have my first full-time staff, like a legitimate paid staff, not just a GA and a bunch of work study. And I think what helped me on the football side was we beat them 28-24 in Salt Lake that
Mm.
in 1998, and I saw how well we played and how conditioned, and so I get the job, go in there. Now we've got to revamp everything. They're used to 4 day a week. I'm doing 3 day. Like I remember the first day of summer. I get there in the summer and everybody thinks they're getting Wednesday off. Well, Wednesday's Big Squat Wednesday. We squat on Wednesday. You got the weekends off.
Right.
And the whole program was totally different than what they had before. And we really, really cranked out a great summer. And we wind up winning the Mountain West title and playing in the Vegas Bowl. And that really set me off with the coaches. And then and at this point in time, the head coach at Utah now, Kyle Whittingham's the D coordinator, and he's the weight room liaison.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyle was always in the weight room. Really good guy. I admire him still to this day. He's done a great job at Utah. And we go through the second winter and we're killing it again. And he comes down to the weight room and he goes, "Hey, I got to ask you something." I go, "Yep." He goes, "We only train 3 days a week, don't we?" And I'm like, "Oh." I said, well, we got an auxiliary day. So, because back at this time, I'm still using the auxiliary day.
Right.
He goes, we're training 3 days a week. I go, yeah. He goes, man, I knew you could do that. Once Kyle Whittingham said, I knew you could do that, I threw out the auxiliary day and said, we're going full tilt 3 day a week. And I'll
Yep.
figure out how to absorb and rewrite the programming that all the accessory work was in the
Mm-hmm.
3 days. So from that point in time, we were a true 3 day a week program. But that's when we started with the blitz programs or the extra workouts like Louis did.
Yep.
So we started that, and that went full tilt when we got to Arizona State. So when I left Boise, the head football coach at the time was Dirk Cutter. We really hit it off. And when I left, he knew it was time for me to go. He goes, hey, man, I'm not going to be here forever. And when I go, you'll get the call. And sure enough, man of his word, 2 years later, he gets the Arizona State job. And I know it was a tough decision because he had a really good strength coach that replaced me at Boise, and they won a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
But he makes the call, and I wind up going with him to Arizona State. First 2 years is football only. We go to the Holiday Bowl. I get a job offer. I want to run the whole program. The AD at the time saw my leadership capabilities for the 2 years I was doing football, and he was going to make that move anyway. They just made it faster.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when everything just took off for me personally and professionally. That's when we were one of the first groups, and I'm sure, Frank coming through it. We had, if not the best, we started what a real internship program looked like with curriculum. We were pumping out people left and right. Till this day, that was, again, I tell people, Boise State made me, and Arizona State put me on another stratosphere.
When I spoke to Frank about working for you, he was like, "Listen, House was a motherfucker, but he taught me how to work hard. He taught me what being a caring coach, leading with love was." And because there was one day I was in his office and I was like, "Man, like this is fucking hard. This is hard." He said, "I know, but I guarantee you, this is going to teach you what it means to be a coach." And
And
people don't
again,
understand.
oh no, like I don't know if you follow me on Instagram, and I made a post. The post popped up with Meryl Streep from Devils Wears Prada, and I reposted it on my story. So my wife would tell people when that movie came out, and she would meet my new hires.
Mhm.
She would tell them, if you haven't watched Devils Wears Prada, you need to go watch that because that's who you're getting ready to work for. And
Mhm.
I don't know, some people may not see this as a compliment, but there's been numerous people who've worked for me said, hardest job I ever had, best job I ever had. And I take that as a compliment
I would too. It's
because
the mark of a
I
leader.
I I always said this. The true definition of a leader isn't those who follow, it's how many leaders you can create. And I think
Amen.
that I can hold my head high that we created a lot of leaders. We had our ways. There was certain things that were non-negotiable, but the freedom to create through our system and our unified approach of how a program should look, people were able to grow. You had your own. What I loved about being the head strength coach of everybody is all my assistants had their own teams. They could learn how to lead. They could learn how to coach with little direction. We had a great group of people that worked well together. We interacted, and that's when programming was at its all-time best. And now, like I said, there's a lot of a la carte strength and conditioning. There's not a lot of mentorship by people that are called directors or head strength and conditioning coaches because everybody's worried about theirs and not worried about what's truly important. Like, don't tell me you run a strength and conditioning program and you've got a staff of 6 and they get to write whatever they want. And you just give them autonomy to the sports they coach. Well, then you're not a leader. You are a schedule. You are a
Mhm.
taskmaster of scheduling workout times for teams, but you're not leading and you're not mentoring. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to hear from people who go on interviews and say, Well, I didn't get the job because the coach said I didn't have enough experience writing programs, but everybody thought I had the right personality or the right capabilities to do it. I go, well, that's stupid because that's their job to teach you how to write programs.
Right.
As long as you can coach, hell, you can figure out writing programs. Just coach the sheet until you go out there, coach the shit out of the sheet until you learn how to write a program. It's not
Pro-
hard. So,
Programming is the easiest part of the job.
yeah. So for me, it was, so like I said, Arizona State, and I don't care. I'm not debate. There's no debate. By the time I left Arizona State, we had the best strength and conditioning program in the nation. Like
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to mimic what Boyd Epley created at Nebraska. When I really realized stop chasing jobs and jobs will come to you was when I was at Boise and I was applying for all these jobs and never getting a hit, just getting all da 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 da. And that's when I was like, you know what? I'm going to make Boise State, Nebraska. And I told that to the athletic trainer. He laughed because he'd been there 30 years. But I coached, and we went out to try to make that program like Nebraska. And I was able to put that model. I wasn't at Utah enough to figure it out, but being at Arizona State for 7 and 5 as the head coach for sports performance, and we were the first school that used sports performance. That's non-debatable. We were the first school that did it in 2003. And so we, and that's a story for a different day, but we put it on the map. We were a program. You came, if you worked for me, you were writing tier system programs. You
Right.
didn't like it, then leave. And what I told people was, but see, for me, because I was versed in all programming, you learned all programming.
Right.
And what I didn't want people like, there's a lot of strength coaches now that have trees that literally that guy goes to another job and just takes that book with him. Hell, it still might have the damn school that he left's name on it.
Mm-hmm.
And they just regurgitate. What I noticed with all my guys is I told them, I said, look, man, when you leave here, I don't expect you to do the tier system. If you think it's the right program for you, great. What I want to know is that I gave you enough that whatever you do, you call it your own and you can live with through your heart. And what I find is, as I talk to a lot of my bigger guys and my bigger women that came through, is yeah, they kind of varied off, but what always happens is at some point in the year, some version of the tier system is coming through their annual plan because it just makes sense. And that's all you could ask for. I mean, again, if I had these dudes just regurgitating stuff, I don't think I did my job as a
Yeah.
leader and a teacher. Because you hear it all the time. If you don't train like this, you're wrong. Hey, man, we train. Here's what I told somebody. I just had a podcast again before this one. And this is certain things I'm going to bring up this year at several conferences I'm speaking at. What we have to remember as strength and conditioning coaches is don't get it twisted. These sports don't need us. They were playing these sports before they were strength coaches, and they'll play these sports if a strength coach never existed. So we've got to understand that, like, hey, man, we've got value and we've got high value, but don't get it twisted. we are very fortunate that this became something that coaches felt could enhance the athlete. But in the end, if, Coach Donahue doesn't bring Boyd Epley into Bob Devaney's office, they were still going to win football games at Nebraska.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got to understand how our role and how to manage that role differently. And that's what we did. Like again, and we all go through different phases of coaching. I hated early on when they called me support staff. And I'm like, I'm not support staff, I'm a coach.
Mm-hmm.
But because I didn't coach a team, I was administrative support staff. And then I learned to embrace that and go, hey, you're right, I am a support staff because you know what my program does? It supports the entire friggin' athletic department.
Right.
My program is the foundation of the athletic department. So I embraced, oh yeah, I'm support staff and I'm a service. My job is to serve. And I liked how Donnell Boucher said this when we had a private clinic at my house. He goes, our job is to serve, but not be a servant, right? Like we're not going to get stepped on, but we're in a service industry. Our job is to provide a service to help that athlete achieve all their goals to the best possible ability that we can in a safe and effective environment where we do things to the best of our abilities and it's not about us. And
Hmm.
that's it takes a long time for a good coach to really build that truth because it used to be about why does it really matter when you're at these conferences to tell everybody how many guys bench 300 and how many guys clean 100. Is that really a reflection of what you're doing with the program? Is that more for you guys to compare your numbers to see who's got stronger guys on the team? But the truth is, I could care less when you're telling me you got 20 guys that squat 600 and I got one and we just won 28-14.
Right.
Because that's, if you learned anything, what I've learned in anything, especially at the highest levels, if you coach team sports, do I care if people get hurt? Yes, I do. I do. But the
Hmm.
truth is, the only KPI they're looking at is wins and losses. I've been on teams that won championships and our injury list was horrendous, and no one really, at the end, it really wasn't brought up. I've been on teams that were healthy, we were super strong, and we lost 10 games and get fired. So
Hmm.
in the end, let's just call it what it is. It's about one thing and one thing only, the record. And a lot
Yeah.
of times in sports like football, the record goes to the football coach, the quarterback, and the strength coach. Because if they don't win, they're not in shape. And you're the
Yeah.
first one to get thrown under the bus. And there's a scapegoat. Like I remember Mark Philippi telling me the strength coach, the new football coach let me go at Las Vegas because he said we weren't strong enough. Well, I know this. If there's one thing Mark Philippi is going to do is he's going to get you strong enough.
Yeah. That's kind of his thing.
Yeah, so it's like, come on, man, just say you want your own guy. Like, and there's value. Like like I was just talking to a buddy of mine that just got a new job, and we've been really close for pretty about 9-10 years now. I met him in the pros, and we were talking about the difference of the importance of the college strength and conditioning coach for football versus the pro guy. In college, one of the first hires. Nowadays, you're even seeing where at these bigger jobs, the coach is bringing the strength coach with him on his first press conference. He's in the private jet. They got the head football coach, a coordinator, the strength coach, and the ops guy. If they're all coming, they're already on the plane.
Right.
In the pros, it might be one of the last guys because it is what it is, man. You're filling a need, and that need is way different than in the college ranks. But like I said, there's just a lot of then that like anything else. Then I hit Louisville for 2 years. Like
Yep.
I tell people, you're being valued by your KPIs. We had some of the best football training I ever had in the 2 years that I was at Louisville. We didn't win, we got fired. That's on me
Right.
too. What was my role in that thing? Hey, so I missed something, whether it was me being a better communicator to the head coach and saying, hey, man, we got a disconnect between the team in the weight room and the team on the field, which happened to me twice in my career. And that's never good when there's more enthusiasm to go lift weights when they're on football scholarship. That's something that you really got to look in the mirror as a strength coach, because then it became how did you get this? How did this get so discombobulated that these guys would rather lift weights than play football? That's not ever should happen because most guys hate lifting weights.
It's true.
So that's on me. That's on the strength coach. You can't get so infatuated with how well you're training to know, hey man, you're not winning. Like something's not right. You see all this stuff now, like on the internet, of all these dudes doing some terrific stuff, and then you look at their record and you're going, there's a disconnect somewhere.
Hmm.
So that's where a good coach has to do a really good job of mirror checking, self-reflect, self-criticize, be vulnerable and humble enough to come on a podcast and tell you, hey man, I made that mistake twice. I
Yeah.
saw it happen. I knew something went wrong, and that's on me. That's not on the football coach. That's on me. When you're getting your ass kicked on an away game and a fifth-year senior comes up to you and you just lost by 35 points and he's saying, yo, Coach House, I'm going to set a PR in the Zerta squat tomorrow. You screwed something up.
It's true. So
So those are, and then, go private. And then next thing you know, I get my dream job in the NFL at Carolina Panthers. I mean, anybody who knew me when I was at Boise State, when Mr. Richardson got the franchise, knew that's where I wanted to be. And God, I mean, you hear it all the time, right? This is my dream job. Then 2 years later, he got another dream job. I tell people all the time, I had my dream job and I got to do that for 9 years. Like, imagine that. Like, you really, truly got the dream job and you got to do it for 9 years. Like, hey, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. The job I have right now with dynamic fitness and strength, this is a dream job, but it ain't the job. Like,
Right.
what I'm able to do at this point in my career and the platform that Kurt and Tammy give me through dynamic and the position that they created for me, man, I'm ruling the roost. But it's a different type of dream, but it's not my dream job. I had my dream. If I go back to coaching tomorrow and someone says, "Is this your dream job?" I said, "No, I had that for 9 years." I said, "This is a different dream and a different journey." The dream of this job is I'm back coaching again, getting my hands dirty and being able to help people chase their dreams and goals and aspirations, as well as our coaching staffs into winning championships. But, for me, like people like, "Oh, House, man, I can't believe it." I said, "Yo, don't feel bad for me, bro. I coached 9 years in the NFL. I had one of 32 jobs in the whole world. Played in a Super Bowl, played a game in London, coached in a Pro Bowl. Like, don't feel sorry for me, man. Won the Strength Coach of the Year award in the NFL. I mean, that's peer voted. I mean, so hey, I can't help it that I got fortunate that not only did I have a dream job, I had probably in those 9 years the best locker room in the entire NFL. Like the players that I was able to coach and the veterans that were willing to share with me to teach me how to become a better professional strength coach. Man, I couldn't have asked for a better opportunity than I did with the Panthers.
I got to interrupt you because you've said this word probably 5 or 6 times during the podcast. You've said the word fortunate. And at no point during your rendition of your career have I thought that at any point you've been fortunate. Everything has been a matter of hard work, whether it is the example of hard work that you had from your father growing up to the calling the NSCA every single day and flooding your resume all over the place to moving your wife halfway across the country to the middle of nowhere to coach, being there for 8 years, going to three different bigger programs, continue to elevate yourself, developing a system, writing a book. And then you kind of glanced over it. But before the podcast, you mentioned that while you were in Carolina doing your dream job, you were 2 hours from your family and only able to be there once a week. Like, to me, that's not fortunate. That's sacrifice. And it's sacrifice in pursuit of a dream.
Yeah,
And I
I mean,
think
and
that's
again, yeah, I think,
incredible.
yeah, I mean, yeah, you can look at it. Yeah, everybody, my perception is you're 100% right. I got here because I wanted to be here, and I
Yeah,
made it work. But because of that, I've been put in fortunate situations.
fair.
Maybe let's reword that. And it was like it's really only like 75 minutes, but 2 hours 75. But here's the other thing I tell people too, that people talk about your journeys and stuff. And this is where again, man, uh, my wife is the rock of our family. I couldn't, like, my parents were huge. My dad, like I said, me and my dad were tight, but my wife, she signed up for this, not really knowing what a coach's wife's all about.
Yeah.
Like people always talk about certain things. Like, here's certain things that you need to understand. I've never moved. My wife's made all the moves. I've never bought a house. I've never sold a house. I've moved 7 times. I've never registered a kid for school. I've never pulled a kid out of school. I never. She's driven more cross country trips than I ever had. She's driven North Carolina to Phoenix, New York to Phoenix, because at this point in time, my parents were still in New York. She's driven uh, Utah, North Carolina, Utah, New York, Boise, North Carolina, Boise, New York. So people got to understand, like, all I'm doing is picking up, jumping in a plane, and going to another school. And she's got to deal with 2 kids who, where's daddy at?
Hmm.
Crying their eyes out and being a single mom for 6 months. I think the only time we ever pulled my kids out of school mid year was when we went to Arizona State because we were there 2 years, and we were really a year and a half. We were there almost, and when we were going, she was like, "We're going now. I'm not waiting until the end of the school year," because back then the kids were still young enough where, in Boise, that we waited through the summer because we were trying to figure out we had to sell a house. In Utah, we just rented, and then then in Arizona State, we were at the same place for the 7 years we were there. So yeah, but she's done all the work, man. I just got to coach. Like I had an easy street. Hey, got a job. When you leaving? Yesterday. Well, what about everything else? Gotta go, man. I gotta start up and I gotta get this. Like she always knew in the jobs that we left, she knew the first summer was so big, she just took the kids and left. It was like, see you in school starts. We're going to North Carolina for the summer. And so it's yeah, and then when I got the Panther job, we had to make a huge uh, you know, sacrifice, but a worthy choice of me commuting, so to speak. But I subletted a place, like I told you, in Charlotte
Hmm.
that was 3/4 of a mile from the stadium. And I came home once a week on the seasons and weekends, and 2 or 3 other days during the week when we could get breaks during the downtime, and did that for 9 seasons. It's hard to believe it was almost a full decade that we were living kind of away from each other, but close enough. Like I would be able to get home for my oldest or my youngest's events for high school and stuff, and go watch him compete. But it was a different dynamic because with my oldest son, I was with him all the time.
Mm.
Like my oldest son grew up in the Boise State weight room. I mean, we weren't making any money. Like I was telling you, man, I think at Boise we were like $600 a month or something for a stipend with school. So I'm literally coaching, and even when I was full time, we weren't making that much, and so we couldn't pay for daycare for full day. So in the afternoons, I was coaching with my son in like a front backpack. He was literally on my chest, and I was coaching 4 or 5 teams all afternoon with him in the he. And then he was in his roller, those little rolling out. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
he literally grew up in the Boise State weight room, uh, his whole life. So
That's
like
awesome.
yeah. So, and that was a thing. And he was a daycare baby. And that was one of the things when we moved to Utah. I didn't necessarily want my second son to be a daycare baby. So it's kind of funny because my youngest son is very much more, like mama's boy, and where my oldest is a daddy's boy because of the way they grew up at those really young ages. Like
Yeah.
my wife was able to stay home with my youngest, where she was, again, like, if you have a wife or you have a, significant other that's had a child, the last thing you want them to do is to go back to work within 2 weeks. And that's what my wife had to do. And that's hard. That's when I knew I owed. And that's
Yep.
why I said, I got to get a job where she never has to work again. Cause
Which job was that?
that
When
was
when was she able to quit?
when I got to Utah. I was like,
Amazing.
we got enough salary where it was like, done, you're out. And she we have Big House Powers, a limited liability, well, now it's a full corp. She
Yeah.
works my books, but she's my personal assistant. She keeps me in check. She helps me even with my job with Dynamic, keeps me on point. She believe me, she's her job of taking care of me, my two boys. Now she's very active with my two grandkids that we're
Love it.
fortunate enough that we can help a lot. And for 4 years they've lived with us, so she's the glue that holds the Kenn family dynamic together for us, and again allows me to do the things that I prefer. I'm extremely, as much as I'm giving, and in certain ways I'm extremely selfish in my time. Like I'm going to do what I want to do before anybody else is going to get with time.
Hmm.
And where she's the exact opposite. She'll put off, and I told her, I said, I want, like today, like I said, you need to be more selfish about taking care of you. But that's, mom, everybody, moms and dads and women and men, they're just different things and she is going to make sure like nothing is going to come between her taking care of her people, even if that means she misses out on what she wants to do on that particular day. And so again, I got and again, to be away from somebody for as long as we have, and in some ways it made us stronger when I came back home. But it was way different for me because I was used to being single, so to speak. And when I came back home and started working from the house, there was a lot of times where I just was not like zoned out, but I was just used to being by myself.
Yep.
And now where, like I said, unless I'm traveling to events, which now events start kicking up here next week,
Hmm.
I work from home. This is my home office. I have a gym. I have my own personal gym that's right next door, and we converted a 2-car garage. That's a standalone building. I have a few other gyms I peruse because I get bored, and then once in a while I'll do local trips visiting coaches in different parts of North and South Carolina. But for the most part, I'm in events, go up to corporate a couple of times a year, and be able to stay relevant in a field that I'm extremely passionate about. And again, I'm at that point now where I've had my successes. I don't need any more necessarily successes, although there's always certain goals you wish you could have hit. But I came close to a lot of them, and now it's about trying to make a significant impact on our field, trying to expose some of the younger generation of strength coaches who don't know a lot of the history, because that's not something that, again, because of the lack of mentorship and
Hmm.
leadership now. And again, it's all trickled down by how you came up. No one's telling the stories. Like, it's amazing that you can go to an NSCA event and some of these people don't know who Boyd Epley is and the fact that he started the NSCA. Like, it's just crazy how. Hey,
It's yeah.
I coached in the NFL with Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera played 9 years in the NFL for the '85 Bears. We had players that got drafted that didn't know Ron played in the NFL.
I find that all the time. Like I'll mention guys like, hey, do you know who Charles Poliquin is? Do you know who Ed Cohn is? Do you know who even I had a gentleman on here named Andre Benoit who worked with Charles Poliquin for years. These are the guys that like pioneers of the industry. And I guarantee you, I made a joke about it that if you don't know who Joe Kenn is, you brought shame to your family at the beginning. Like I guarantee you there's coaches listening to this who have no idea who you are and the
Oh
impact
yeah,
that you've had in the industry. And that's part of the reason why I started the podcast.
yeah.
So I
I
can
mean,
get
again,
people like you talking.
and I don't expect everybody to know who I am, but there are certain factions of strength and conditioning that if you're in the college or high school or even the pros and you've not heard, you may not know me, you may not have read my book, but if you haven't even heard my name, have you
There's a
really been
problem.
doing, have you, yeah. And again, I don't mean that to be arrogant. I mean, I'm just like, I just, again, I put myself in a position to be recognized. Like I tell people, I didn't write the tier system for it to go worldwide. And as you know, Paul, it's worldwide.
Yes,
I get
absolutely.
people all over Japan, Germany. Uh, are you familiar with Troll Steuben, who runs the yard out of Santa Monica Gym? It's a it's a
Yes. Yep.
yeah. He has people from all over the world that travel to train there. Club volleyball. He had a guy visiting from Ireland, and Troll trained one of our linemen at the Panthers, Ryan Khalil. And Ryan's in there training, and Troll introduces him and say, "Hey, this is Ryan Khalil, center for the Carolina Panthers." And this guy in his Irish accent goes, "Carolina Panthers, Joe Kenn tier system, Joe Kenn tier system."
That's
It's like stuff like that. And again, I mean, I didn't do it to be world. I did it because women's basketball coach didn't want to do the old football programs. So it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to write this program and I'm going to be known worldwide. It was, hey, man, I'm writing these programs because I want my kids at Boise State to have the best strength training program they can have.
right.
And, just like with my Block Zero concept, I was just talking to a buddy of mine, like in the high schools, like over 75% of the high schools that are members of the NHSSCA, the new high school association, are doing some shape or form of what I consider the Block Zero concept of how to introduce strength training into. So again, it's not my fault that the things that I've been able to evolve with some help of others, the tier
Yeah.
system evolved later on, but the tier system concept there was no one there helping me with that until it started to roll, and I got input from other coaches and was exposed to new learning modalities of programming. The Block Zero stuff resonated through long interactions with myself from the time I was at Boise, and just we were just destroying freshmen, and I didn't have the confidence and I didn't have the credibility to really launch what I thought this program should look like till I was at Arizona State, and it was me and Marco Uyama at the time was like, enough's enough. We got to do it. And we had a coach who believed in us so much that it didn't matter what we did in the weight room, he was going to sign off. So
Yeah, like I did that podcast with Chad the other week, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we do some Block Zero stuff." I'm like, I haven't heard the term Block Zero in years, and I knew exactly who it was from.
yeah, I mean, so again, I mean, and he's running stuff out of a Parisi speed school curriculum. So
Right.
for me, that's where, like, when people talk about, like, oh, this guy's a great strength coach, he's won numerous national titles. No, the football team won numerous national titles. You're just part of the staff. So when I look at myself, I can literally say I made, and again, I don't care what people, if you go, oh, this arrogant, cocky ass, it's not
You've
my
earned
fault.
it.
My thing is this: I've made two. The tier system was a 100% paradigm shift in program design, and the Block Zero concept hit because it made too much sense when we continue to talk about one of our goals is to build robust and resilient athletes and hopefully reduce the risk of injury. But yet, I'm going to throw a 10-year-old in the weight room and tell him to back squat when the guy can't even bend over and tie his own shoes. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's so, again, it's just a lot of the stuff that I did was really out of common sense and studying the game through the eyes of an athlete, not the eyes of a weightlifter or a weightlifting coach. Because, yes, we got to take derivative, even now, to some of the things that CrossFit does, from metabolic demands and strongman carrying implements and stuff like that. Like, when I built the tier system, I said it's components of the 3 strength disciplines: bodybuilding, powerlifting, and Olympic lifting, because all 3 of those dynamics help encompass what I believed an athlete needed. They needed lean body mass, they needed explosiveness, and they needed absolute strength. That's all of those were pieces to a puzzle. But some guys, again, because of how at that era, if you were a bodybuilder and you got hired to be a strength coach, you trained them like bodybuilders. If you were a weightlifting coach, you trained them like weightlifters. But what I learned was you can't train a sport with a sport because you're missing out on the other components that are missing from that specific sport. And now I would say that the tier system can be built off of the 5 strength sports of CrossFit and strongman, and add those in because of the different strength modalities that you can use to get people strong with strongman, and some of the metabolic demands that CrossFit has shown that high-level athletes can adapt to with certain weight training protocols that were doomed to be, heresy, right? Like, there's certain things that I shouldn't say, I don't know if I'll ever be able to say I'm going to ever do 20 box jumps or 20 cleans
or kipping pull-ups.
Yeah, but what strong men and strong women, that sport, and what CrossFit has showed you is a lot of things that we were told in exercise phys class, they've proven wrong, that the human body will adapt to the demands placed on it if it has the genetic potential to do so. That's why you only see the 40 best people compete in the CrossFit Games. That's why you only see the 25 best overall men compete for world's strongest man on earth, Arnold and Rogue championships. Why is it when they're invited, it's always like the same 6 guys and a couple of up-and-comers, right? Like, and then even at the world's strongest man, they bring in 30 guys. Nothing against it. They should reduce it to 20 because 30 dudes aren't good enough to be in the world's strongest man competition.
Well, most people also don't know that you coached Brian Shaw in college, and then also was his strength coach for a period as a professional strongman as well.
I got to see it, and that 2 years, like I told Brian, most challenging coaching job I ever had was coaching an individual strength athlete because Now the
Fuck,
weight room
fuck, fuck,
matters.
fuck.
Guy can miss 400-pound bench and still have 10 tackles. But if you got me,
I got you. I think we cut out for a few seconds, so technical difficulties. I think the last thing that I said was that you coached Brian Shaw in college and then also as a
yeah.
professional
So
strongman.
Brian interned for us at Arizona State, so I got to work with him when he was an intern for us. We gave him a GA job, and then he decided he was going to make a run at World's Strongest Man, and actually did it 4 times. His last 2 years of his career, he brought me on to help with his programming, and we were trying to rebuild his hamstrings from several big hamstring tears from deadlifting. So we had to really rebuild his deadlift. It took 2 years, a little too long for me. But what I was saying is, Brian renewed my kindling for how much I love coaching and how much I hate virtual coaching. Uh, it's kind of the wave of the future, but God, man, I need to be in the weight room with my guy. And
It's an adjustment for sure.
yeah. And so with Brian, I learned a lot about really the pressure of dealing with an elite level strength athlete where now the number counts. Where in football or team sport, guy misses a bench, no big deal. He's probably going to rush for 100 anyway, right? Or he's still going to have 10 tackles. But if Brian Shaw misses a 400-pound log, he just lost 4 points and probably lost the title in one event. So the pressure of the numbers and the strength, and then learning at that level of strong, like in what I would call the non-competitive phases, I think math can still be utilized for high-level strongman, like utilizing percentages of a
Yeah,
training max. But once they get into the competition cycle, all of that's off because it's so
100%.
hard and so heavy. And I learned that from year 1 to 2 is you can't place numbers on these guys because if they miss, they're psychologically screwed.
Yeah.
So you got to give them ranges and you got to give them push sets. And that's what we learned from year 1 to year 2. The problem was in year 2, he was probably better prepared than he was year 1 because of a lot of what I called grown man problems outside the gym. When he finished 4th and then he finished 7th. And the problem there was he came in second in the group and had to do the stone off. And he just happened to have to go against one of the best stone lifters was in the World's Strongest Man that year, Ronald Hainler, and wind up having to do like 11 rep stone load to get to the finals. So here you are trying to win your 5th title. Now you got the added pressure of you got to do a stone off. You can't, if you lose the stone off, you're out. You're not going to the finals.
Right.
Now you're going against a guy who's not going to quit and pushed you to a brink of, like, when the guy comes off and said, I had to go to that dark place, you know, as a coach, yeah, that's too early to be in the dark place. We still got 6 more events in 2 days.
Right.
And I think and when you're the oldest guy in the field by 5 years, and that was because take Luke Stoltman out, you're the oldest guy by 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the guys who are fighting for the titles. You can't have those. You can't have that happen. And you know, the thing is, again, and me and Brian talk about it. He won more events in that group than anybody else, but he had one bad event and wound up losing the group by a half a point. If he wins that group, there's no doubt in my mind he's in the podium.
Right.
But because and if you watch the finals that year, he didn't have 5th gear. And it is what it is. The good thing is he rebounded, won his the strongest man on earth at his own show to end it on top with a new cool title.
Right.
And it all ended because I even brought it up. I go, if you would have won World's Strongest Man, how do you think this one would have turned out? I think as much as I'm disappointed because, like I tell people, I have to protect the athlete. Brian brought me on to win a 5th title. We didn't do that. That's on me too.
Right.
Even though it's an individual sport and there was mistakes that he'll attest to in certain events where the strategy wasn't right or he didn't grip the yoke right or something like that. In the end, I'm going to protect my guy. Like, that's on me. I'm his coach. We didn't set forth. He won Strongest Man on Earth. Great way to end your career. He's putting on one of the best shows ever. It pays big money. It went as good as it. I was very impressed with how well it ran because you're thinking, oh, is his show going to die now that he's not competing? It was bigger than it was the year before when he left. So I think that show, as long as Brian and his wife have the wherewithal and the mental capacity to put up with a lot of BS and being a promoter of a high level show, that show's going to surpass a lot of things that have happened in Strongman because of Brian's energy and Kerry's energy to do right by a sport that's given them a hell of a life. And, I mean, Brian's really the first guy that shows Strongman that you can make a real career, a profitable career without having to get 3 other jobs to like, I mean, that guy started out when first prize for some events was $1,000.
Yeah.
Like, people don't know that. Like, and then these younger guys now, they expect, oh, what's the prize money? I'm not going to do that. Well, shit, back in the day, 10th place was first place.
Yeah. I want to be mindful of your time, and I just have two more questions. The first one is, if you could have one thing on a billboard as your legacy and a message to young coaches, what would it be?
Oh, man. Stay your authentic self.
I like that. I like that
I
a
think
lot.
I don't think I think if anybody who knows me knows, if they knew me from Boise State to now, I don't think I've changed much, no matter how things have happened. Like I told my good friend Ron English that we coached together for a long time when I got the Carolina Panther job. I said, "Hey, bro, I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know how long I'm going to be here." But I was Joe Big House, and I'm sorry, I'm going to curse. I said, I'm coming in smiling, and I'm Joe Big House motherfucking Ken. And when they kick me out, I'm walking out smiling, Joe Big House motherfucking Ken.
I love
And
it.
and when I got told I was not being retained, and again, fired, every you can make up cool stuff. Like I can tell people that I was on an expiring contract. The new coach didn't want to keep me, so my contract was expired and I was left, which is a nice way of saying he could have
I
kept
got
me.
fired.
Yeah. But I like to say I got an expiring contract that wasn't extended. So, and I literally, the 2 security guards, they got to watch, like, they watched me pack up my office, and I opened up the 2 doors of the weight room and walked out smiling, like knowing that I did the best job. I know, I looked in that, and again, I know when I've had conversations with Ron, and I had conversations with Marty Herney, I looked them in the eyes and I said, I know this. I exceeded every expectation that I know you guys had for me when I got this job. And they both nodded their heads in agreement. So I know what I did. Uh, I gave everything I could, the best of my abilities, through the good and the bad, even though certain things towards the end didn't shake out the way you'd like to see it. But we tried to do the best we could to the players. I thought we were great listeners, had a terrific staff that worked with me. The players were I think we built an environment that was very player friendly. We were definitely vet friendly when vets would come in from other teams. Very, very courteous to know how they trained and how we could adapt to what they liked, what they didn't. And that was the great thing about using the tier system in the NFL. It really was just plug and paste. I like this exercise. I don't like this. Perfect. You'll do that exercise on this day at this level, and you'll do this exercise on this day at this time. As long as they're doing the stuff that they're used to. And then, like I said, we had Players Choice Day on
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday. They were able to come in and do whatever they wanted. So if there were certain exercises that we weren't able to put in that they like to do with their private guys, that was the ideal for them opportunity to do stuff like that. So it was very open ended. We always left it. I think we trained smart hard,
Mm-hmm.
not stupid hard. And I tell people I can honestly say both because I created a lot of stupid hard in college football environments with freshman Fridays and all that other crazy stuff we used to do. And we were one of the first of 3 strength coaches to bring strongman training into college football. And so it was a good ride. And I think a lot of it was, again, I never really changed who I was. I'm a New Yorker, so I'm going to talk shit, but I'm not a bullshitter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm going to be what some people say. Oh, house is not real. House is hard to. What do they say? You're not approachable. Well, I'm a New Yorker. I'm not like I had to learn. I come to North Carolina and everybody, even my wife, hey, 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 hey. I'm not saying hey if I don't know you. My wife learned that in New York. Her first time, I said, look, don't say hello to anybody in New York City. It ain't going down the way you think it is.
Right.
And so you don't know if I'm unapproachable unless you approach me. And
I'm the
once you
same.
approach, like, I mean, people have seen me hold court at clinics,
Hmm.
and I'm very aware of how when I came up and I talked to coaches and they kind of sit there listening and blow you off. I try to be conscientious of, hey, if somebody's willing to come up and talk to me, especially a younger coach, I gotta at least do my best to give him or her some real time, not, hey man, I'm kind of looking over to see, hey man, commit to those people. The next thing you know, you
Yeah.
got 20 people around you and you wind up telling stories for an hour. And that's why a lot of times when my wife's with me, especially after I speak, she's like, hey, you got 5 minutes. What do you want, a picture? You're in, you're out. You got 5 minutes. Look at this line. So she
Yeah.
gets to be the bad person for me. But I really think if that's a good question that's really never been posed to me. I would just say, stay your authentic self, whatever that means to you. Do not try to be somebody you're not, because when you start playing that fake game, it's hard to come back.
I agree.
Like they always say, like when you take a job, go in there being an asshole and then become nice. Because if you try to go from nice to an asshole, it's not going to work. And the good thing for me is I got a lot of asshole in me, so that's easy for me to to start that way at a lot of times. So yeah, I think be your authentic self and don't be ashamed of what that is. Like,
I love that.
and then one thing I would say, and we've heard this before, right? Frosty Westerling, make the big time where you are.
Mm.
I think for younger coaches, take that to heart. Like when I ask you, what are you doing? You're like, well, I'm just an intern at, ITT Tech. Well, guess what? You're always going to be the intern at ITT Tech with that mindset. Your job should be, yeah, I'm at ITT Tech as an intern, and I'm trying to be the best intern I can be. Like that's the job you have now is the best job in the world until you get the next one. Because if you give a half-ass effort to the job you have now, how you getting your next one? Who's
Yeah.
recommending you? Like I always would try when we'd have all those interns come in, like even like with Frank, you know, I evaluated those interns on everything. Like we'd send them for lunch. Well, if you get the lunch order right, don't ask me when you're going to write programs. If you can't even get the lunch order right, how am I going to give you a team?
Yeah.
Like when we ask you to clean the weight room and the weight room's not clean, again, that's the old school stuff that happened when old GAs. Hey, go pick me. You got to pick up coach at the airport. Hey, you got to go pick up my dry cleaners at 4 o'clock. And if you do it at 4:30, you think that guy's recommending you for a job when you can't be on time? So those are all that stuff matters. So, you know, when you go into these positions, if I'm in a group and I'm an intern and there's 5 interns, you know what I'm doing? I'm trying to be the best intern because you
100%.
got to be smart enough to realize if someone calls for a job, who's the first person the head guy's going to recommend? Who he thinks the best intern is.
Yep.
Not the last one. You don't want to be fifth. So go in there and dominate who you are. That's why, like, a lot of times when people call me for recommendations, they'll go, give me 3 names. I'm like, I'm giving you 1 name. And they go, well, I need 3. I said, well, go find somebody else because I'm giving you one, the one who's going to get the job. And they go, what do you mean? I said, if I give you three names, what's your next question? Rank them.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, here's what I know. If I give you 3 names and Paul gives you 3 names and Frank gives you 3 names, now you got 9 names. But really, all you needed was our 3 number ones because
Yeah.
one of those 3 is getting the job.
Right.
You're not getting to Paul's third, which might be really ninth on the real depth chart if we ranked. Like if I knew all
Exactly.
9 names, I could probably rank them in order. So let's just say your third is the ninth guy.
Mm-hmm.
If they get to that guy, then you don't have to know how to hire, because you should have took my first, Frank's first, and Paul's first. Though one of those 3 guys better be the guy who gets the job.
100%.
So it's the same thing with interns. Hey man, I got a job open. And I used to tell people, what you really want to do is you want to know that you're kicking ass so much that I'm looking for a job for you and you don't even know it. You know how many times I've walked down to a GA or an intern? Happened twice with the Panthers. I said, look, man, there's a job open down here. You need to get your resume in there 20 minutes ago, right now. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts. You can get this job. And boom. And he's like, damn, man, I didn't even know I was doing a good job. Well, now you know, because you're getting a job.
The last question I have for you is, if there was one person that you think would be valuable to have on the podcast, who would it be? The caveats, you got to help me get them on.
Oh man, I got some good ones. So from anything inside or anybody,
anything coaching.
Shoot, just one. I can give you a couple. I mean, again, the 2 guys that are resonating with me now because they're both in the college football playoffs as dark horses are Joe Conley at Arizona State University and Ben Hilgert at Boise State University would be 2 good guys. Leanne Blinn, who's the sports performance director for Olympic sports at Arizona State. She's one of my dogs. She would be awesome. Have you had Travis Mash on?
I haven't had Travis on, but that's a mutual connection. Listen, I'll text you after the podcast.
Okay.
Joe, thank you so much for joining me today. This was amazing.
Thank you to Chad for recommending me to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when do you think you'll be in Fort Mill?
April.
Oh, April for sure. Well,
April.
Hit me up, because like I said, man, I'll invite you. You can come up, man. We can talk shop in the gym, and
I'd love that.
I mean, like I said, man, really, I would figure if your Fort Mill is Fort Mill 77, you would probably, I think Fort Mill is 77. So you take 77 to the I-40, it's pretty much all highway.
Oh, perfect.
And I would say, depending on when you left, if you left outside the traffic zones, hour and a half.
Oh, easy. I'll do that 100%.
Like I know from my house to the Charlotte airport is 70 minutes. Now, I got Fast Pass, so I pay the tolls, but it's worth it. But it's 70 minutes from my house to the Charlotte airport. And I would say that you're probably, again, depending on how close you are to the border, say another 20 minutes or so. But it's definitely less than an hour 45 for sure.
Perfect. You heard it here, folks. A collaboration, big house power, Paul O'Need. It's going to happen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.